welcome in. It is great to have you with us today.
Yeah, really great to be here.
Whether you're prepping for a major presentation, taking a long walk to clear your head, or just, indulging that constantly curious mind of yours, you have definitely landed in the right place.
Absolutely.
We have a highly customized deep dive lined up for you today, and the mission is, well, it's entirely unique.
It really is.
Usually you send us this massive stack of source material to synthesize.
Right, like dense white papers.
Exactly. Sprawling industry articles, whole chapters of economic theory, or pages of your own field notes.
Yep.
But today,
Today's different.
very different. The material you provided is incredibly concentrated. It is an exercise in extreme minimalism.
That's a good way to put it.
You sent over a single, isolated excerpt from a document bearing the label text collé, which simply translates to pasted text.
And it's a really fascinating constraint to work within. I mean, when you isolate a single idea like this, stripping away all the surrounding context, the filler and the noise, you are forced to evaluate the raw mechanics of the narrative itself.
You really are.
You have to look at the structural integrity of the words. And the narrative contained in this one tiny piece of pasted text is surprisingly dense.
It's almost heavy. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
I will reveal the exact word-for-word source text you shared for this deep dive. Here is the entirety of our material today. Quote, "The genius strategy behind Lego rescuing itself from total bankruptcy in 2004.
Just 13 words.
13 words.
Yet those 13 words managed to construct a complete architectural blueprint of a corporate thriller.
A thriller, yeah.
We have a beloved global icon, an existential threat, a specific historical anchor, and a triumphant self-executed turnaround.
My immediate reaction to reading that sentence was honestly a bit of cognitive dissonance.
Oh, for sure.
We are talking about Lego here.
Right.
A brand that is so ubiquitous, it practically operates as a baseline utility for childhood.
A utility for creativity, even.
Yes. To see that warm, nostalgic powerhouse placed directly adjacent to the phrase total bankruptcy feels jarring. It almost reads like a glitch in the matrix.
That cognitive dissonance is actually a recognized psychological phenomenon. It's often referred to as corporate invincibility bias.
Corporate invincibility bias.
Exactly. We are heavily conditioned to view legacy institutions, especially deeply ingrained cultural touchstones, as permanent fixtures.
Because they've just always been there.
Right, because a brand like Lego has been around since we were children and is now around for our children. Our default assumption is that their operational machinery is just bulletproof.
Totally.
Seeing them associated with bankruptcy shatters that illusion. It forces us to confront the reality that behind the colorful plastic and the joyful marketing campaigns,
There's a balance sheet.
yes, there's a fragile financial ecosystem susceptible to the exact same market forces as a corner bodega.
I want to push back on the phrasing a bit, though. The text explicitly uses the term total bankruptcy.
It does.
Isn't the word total doing a lot of heavy lifting there? I mean, is that just a clickbait modifier?
How do you mean?
Well, bankruptcy is bankruptcy. Once you hit the wall, you hit the wall, right?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the distinction between bankruptcy and total bankruptcy is actually profound in the corporate restructuring world.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Bankruptcy, in its standard application, is often used as a strategic shield.
Like Chapter 11.
Exactly. A company reorganizes, renegotiates its debts, sheds some unfavorable leases, and continues operating while protected from creditors. It is a financial tool.
A reset button.
Right. The modifier total, however, signals something far more terminal. It implies the brink of absolute liquidation.
Wow. So we aren't talking about lawyers shuffling papers in a boardroom to buy time.
Not at all.
We are talking about the factory lights actually turning off.
Precisely the opposite of a standard restructuring. Total bankruptcy means reaching the mathematical point of no return.
The absolute bottom.
The point where the liabilities so overwhelmingly eclipse the assets that the creditors have the leverage to simply dismantle the company for parts.
Just sell everything off.
Yes, the intellectual property gets auctioned off, the molds get sold to competitors, the brand ceases to be a living entity and becomes a historical artifact.
That is dark.
It is. By using the word total, the author of this text isn't just adding flair. They are establishing the stakes at the absolute maximum. The margin for error had entirely evaporated.
That reframes the entire sentence for me. It transforms it from a dry financial footnote into a genuine existential crisis.
It's life or death for the corporation.
And when you, as a learner, consider the leverage creditors hold in a total liquidation scenario, it makes the idea of a legacy brand surviving that cliff edge seem almost impossible.
It does seem impossible.
But what keeps this from feeling like an abstract, hypothetical business school scenario is the timestamp.
Right, the year.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text anchors this entire dramatic arc to a specific year, 2004.
The inclusion of 2004 is the linchpin of the sentence.
Without it.
Without that specific temporal anchor, the statement floats in the ether of corporate mythology.
Yeah, it sounds like a fairy tale.
Exactly. It sounds like a fable. Once upon a time, a great toy company almost perished.
Right.
By stamping it with a year, it demands to be taken seriously as a historical event.
But why does the human brain need that timestamp so badly? If the text just said, the genius strategy behind Lego rescuing itself from total bankruptcy, the stakes are still high.
Sure.
What did the 2004 actually accomplish psychologically for the reader?
It creates a defined boundary between eras, which is how we naturally process complex histories. It draws a stark line in the sand.
The before and an after.
Exactly. When we study business strategies or societal shifts, a timestamp forces us to recognize that the crisis did not happen in a vacuum.
It was tied to that moment.
The vulnerability was tied to a very specific set of cultural, economic, and internal conditions present in that exact period. For you, analyzing your own industry's history, identifying the exact year a dominant player faltered allows you to reverse engineer the market conditions of that time.
That makes a lot of sense. It also highlights a massive disconnect between consumer perception and corporate reality.
How so?
Think about 2004. The world was transitioning rapidly into a digital space, but physically, many of us listening were entirely oblivious to any crisis at this company.
Completely oblivious.
People were out buying brick sets in 2003 and 2004, completely unaware that the structural foundation of the company was caving in.
Right.
It proves that a brand's external cultural relevance does not automatically equal internal financial stability.
That is a crucial insight. A company can be universally loved and simultaneously bleeding out financially.
Love doesn't pay the bill.
No, the affection of the consumer base cannot pay down toxic debt. And that brings us to the mechanics of how they survived this era, which is detailed in the next crucial phrase of our source text: rescuing itself.
I am fascinated by that specific choice of words, rescuing itself.
It's very deliberate.
It is a fiercely active, reflexive phrase. The text doesn't say they were bailed out by a government initiative.
Yep.
It doesn't say they were acquired by a massive entertainment conglomerate, which is the standard fate for struggling intellectual property.
That's usually how it goes.
They didn't rely on a white knight.
Because relying on a white knight when you are facing total bankruptcy usually means relinquishing control entirely.
You become a subsidiary.
Right. In the corporate ecosystem, executing a self-rescue from the brink of liquidation is exceptionally rare due to the sheer amount of institutional inertia.
It's too hard to turn the ship.
When a legacy company hits that terminal velocity of failure, the internal culture is usually too defensive to save itself.
Right. Because the leadership team that drove the company to the edge of the cliff is rarely equipped to navigate away from it. To rescue oneself requires a brutal level of introspection.
It requires institutional ego death.
Ego death. I like that.
The people inside the building have to admit their fundamental market philosophies were wrong.
That's incredibly hard to do.
Very hard. They have to tear down the operational structures they themselves likely built and advocated for, and they have to construct an entirely new framework from the ashes, all while the ship is actively taking on water.
Wow.
The agency implied by the phrase rescuing itself shifts the narrative from a story of market victimhood to a story of extreme radical ownership.
I think that concept scales down beautifully for anyone listening to.
Absolutely.
Whether you are managing a division at a Fortune 500 company, running a startup, or just navigating a severe pivot in your own career, the idea of a self-rescue is a powerful framework.
It really is.
It reinforces that even when external market forces are hostile, the capacity for a turnaround can be generated internally. You don't necessarily have to wait for an external savior or a lucky break if you can restructure your own approach.
That extreme ownership is necessary, but as the text implies, sheer willpower isn't enough. You can't just try harder at the things that were already driving you into bankruptcy.
Right. Doing the wrong thing faster won't save you.
Exactly. You need a specific mechanism for the rescue. Which leads us to the most provocative part of the text, the genius strategy.
I have to be honest, My initial instinct is to be highly skeptical of the word genius here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we live in an era of hyperbole.
Mm.
People will post a video about a new way to load a dishwasher or fold a fitted sheet and call it a genius strategy.
That's very true.
The word gets thrown around so casually that it has almost lost its semantic weight. Is a turnaround strategy ever truly genius, or is it usually just finally applying common sense after years of ignoring it?
What's fascinating here is the author's deliberate choice to elevate the turnaround mechanism above standard corporate pragmatism.
Okay.
If we assume the author isn't just relying on hyperbole, we have to dissect what separates an effective strategy from a genius one.
Right.
If a company is going bankrupt due to overspending, an effective strategy is basic arithmetic. You cut costs.
You lay off a percentage of the workforce.
Exactly. You close underperforming facilities. That is effective management. But nobody studies that in a masterclass.
Right. If the boat is sinking because there's a hole in it, bailing water and plugging the hole is effective. But a genius strategy implies something far more lateral.
Yes.
It implies you figured out a way to turn the sinking boat into a functioning submarine.
Exactly the distinction. A genius strategy requires a massive paradigm shift. It usually involves a counterintuitive approach that defies the standard logic of the industry at that time.
Because standard logic is what got them in trouble.
Precisely. When facing total bankruptcy, the instinct of any board of directors is panic, contraction, and extreme defensive posturing. To implement a genius strategy means looking at the board from a completely different axis.
I imagine that implementing a truly genius strategy is incredibly risky too.
Oh, massively.
By definition, if an idea is genius, it probably looks completely insane to the majority of people in the room when it's first proposed.
It always does.
Someone probably stood up in a boardroom in 2004, pitched this unnamed strategy, and the old guard likely said, that will accelerate our ruin.
That is the hallmark of lateral thinking. It perceives a path through the labyrinth that standard traditional logic cannot see. And let's look at the preposition used right before it. The genius strategy behind Lego rescuing itself.
Behind.
The word behind is doing subtle but important work. It implies a curtain being pulled back.
Revealing the trick.
It suggests that this wasn't an accidental drift back into profitability, nor was it just a lucky quarter. It was a calculated, deliberate, and perhaps initially hidden architectural design that pulled them away from the void.
It frames the mechanics of business survival as an art form rather than just a spreadsheet exercise.
I like that. An art form.
When I think about times in my own life where I've tried to strategize my way out of a failure, like trying to fix a double-book schedule by just vaguely ghosting people and hoping the problem resolves itself.
We all been there.
That's certainly a strategy. It might even temporarily delay the crash, but it's defensive, it's reactive, and it eventually fails. A genius strategy requires you to completely redefine the rules of the engagement.
It requires moving from a reactive posture to a proactive, visionary posture, even when your resources are at their absolute lowest point.
Which is terrifying.
It is. That is the paradox of the genius turnaround. You have to invest intellectual capital and take massive strategic risks at the exact moment you have the least amount of financial runway to afford a mistake.
So what does this all mean?
Let's synthesize it.
We've taken 13 isolated words from your pasted text document and stretched them out, stress tested the vocabulary, and examined the psychology behind the phrasing. And what we found is a remarkably complete, highly concentrated narrative arc.
It truly is a masterclass in narrative efficiency.
Yeah.
When you break it down structurally, you have the classical elements of the hero's journey perfectly mapped onto corporate governance.
Oh, that's interesting.
You have the famous protagonist. You have the dark night of the soul, represented by the threat of total bankruptcy in the specific era of 2004. And you have the triumphant return, achieved not by luck, but by the protagonist rescuing itself through the application of a genius strategy.
But why should you, the listener, care about the structural integrity of this one sentence?
That's the real question.
Because beyond the intellectual exercise of unpacking it, there's a fundamental actionable truth embedded here. This text serves as a stark reminder that no entity, no matter how beloved or culturally ubiquitous, is immune to the laws of gravity.
None of them.
If a brand that defines global childhood can face total, unmitigated bankruptcy, then absolute security is a myth. But the empowering flip side is equally true. No crisis is too deep, and no failure is too imminent. To escape, if you have the courage to look inward, take extreme ownership of the problem and execute a lateral counterintuitive strategy.
It teaches us that long-term survival is not a passive state of being. You cannot coast on legacy.
No coasting.
Survival is an active, aggressive, and highly creative process. You cannot merely endure an existential threat. You have to outthink it.
It definitely changes how I view organizational struggles. It makes you want to look at the roadblocks in your own life or career and ask, am I just employing standard defensive tactics to survive this, or am I willing to risk looking a little crazy to find the genius strategy that actually rescues the situation?
This raises an important question, and it is the thought I want to leave you with to mull over long after we sign off today.
Let's hear it.
We have spent all this time analyzing the immense weight of this single sentence and the triumph it describes. The source explicitly tells us that a genius strategy was the mechanism that pulled them out of the fire in 2004. They executed the ultimate self-rescue.
Right.
But what happens to a company or an individual after they survive total bankruptcy?
Once the fire is out.
Exactly. Does the genius strategy that saved them in their darkest hour eventually harden into their new institutional dogma? Does the emergency parachute become the new airplane?
Oh, wow.
Or does true infinite survival require the courage to eventually abandon that very same genius strategy years later, to tear down the thing that saved you and invent entirely new genius strategies so you never face the abyss again? Because the tool that prevents you from drowning is rarely the same tool you need to climb the next mountain.
That is a phenomenal point to end on. Does the ultimate cure eventually become the new limitation?
Exactly.
The idea that you might have to kill the strategy that saved your life in order to keep growing is a profound concept. I want to warmly thank you for bringing such a provocative, concentrated nugget of insight to the table today. It proves that you don't always need a massive stack of research to uncover deep structural truths about how we operate, fail, and rebuild. Thank you for your continuous curiosity and for trusting us to explore these fascinating concepts alongside you. Until next time, keep examining the foundations of your own strategies. We are signing off from this deep dive. Take care.